You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith, and this is my conversation with a fella called Björn Strid. He's from Sweden, and he's in a couple of bands. One of them is Flight Orchestra, and the other one is Soilwork. Now, the reason for the conversation is to promote Flight Orchestra's brand new album called Sometimes the World Ain't Enough, but I also thought it would be a good opportunity to talk to Björn about his very good friend who's in a coma, one of the best guitarists of all time in my view, Mr. Ralph Santolla. Let's have a listen to what Björn has to say. Here we go.
Good, how are you?
Plugging away on the side of the road here, somewhere in the Brisbane Bayside suburb of Birkdale. So greetings from the side of a highway. I've just gone and picked up a Gallien Kruger 4x10 that was on the market on Gumtree, which is a bit like eBay over here, and a fellow I'm on the northern side of the Gold Coast, but I knew I had my interview with you on, so it was a case of just sort of fitting that in between feeding the kids and getting dinner organised, picking that up, and then having a chat to your good self.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for doing it.
Cool, man. How's things been going for you with the release of the new album?
Good. It's been pretty intense, very busy, a lot of press, and meanwhile just finished up the new Soilwork album as well. So, yeah, it's good times indeed.
Yeah, fair enough.
Interest. For sure.
You've always got a lot going on, so let's talk about this new album first. So, we had a chat about a year ago. You've probably done hundreds of interviews between then and now, so I certainly won't ask if you can recall. But look, I was impressed with your previous release back then, Amber Galactic, but I think I like this one more, to be honest with you. Sometimes the world ain't enough. Yeah, I think I just got used to your sound through Amber Galactic, and I would say that you consolidated the sound, and I couldn't I'm not so familiar with the album that I can name every track on it, but I listen to albums in my car, and I just find it's a great driving album, this new one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was one of the reasons, we started the band, to sort of create sort of a soundtrack of being in motion. So it definitely makes sense. I mean, listening to it in the car it's probably a very good way of, sort of getting a nice introduction to our music.
And did the same musicians appear on this album here as what appeared on Amber Galactic?
Yes, with the addition of the two backups vocalists that are featured on some of the songs. We like to call them the Airline Annas. They're the backup singers that we had with us live, and we thought it would have been cool to have them at least on a few songs on the album. So it definitely gives a little bit of ABBA flair to it, I guess.
Cool, yeah. So do you get a lot of pressure from Nuclear Blast to focus on one or the other? I'm talking about Soilwork or Flight Orchestra, or do they just go, mate, you've been doing this 20 years or 25 years or whatever it is at this stage, go ahead and do your thing?
There's no pressure, really. Thank God. There's enough pressure as it is coming from other directions, basically. But no, I mean, the label is still... they're still backing up Soilwork, and they also think Flight Orchestra is really, really exciting. So there seems to be a balance, And for us, we have the same booking agent as well for Soilwork and Flight Orchestra. Otherwise, it probably would have turned into a disaster. So that definitely helps, But I think it's a great vibe coming from the label.
Have you had any riffs that you thought were destined for, say, Soilwork, for example, but you've reworked them into the framework that you're working within Flight Orchestra?
No, I can't say that happened. Maybe a melody here and there, but it's usually very separated. It's like an easy switch, and I always know what's destined for Soilwork or Flight Orchestra, and okay. I think Soilwork is very much a band where we sort of decide, should we approach the songwriting for a new album, that we sort of make a decision there, and with Flight it's more of a constant thing. We just keep writing songs and we never really leave the studio. So I think that's the difference there, and I guess it makes it easier to sort of separate things as well.
Okay, now, when we last spoke too, I asked you if you thought you might be coming down to Australia, so I guess I'll ask the same question again, because I know it's difficult to come down, mate, but do you guys think that you'll be down anytime soon?
Yeah, I mean the fan base is definitely growing, and I've been doing so much press for Australia, and I mean I think that the chances are definitely bigger on this album, but it's also a matter of budget in the end. But if people really spread the word and pick up the album and we're going to do everything we can to make it happen, it would be fantastic.
I'm going to switch gears completely if that's okay, because when last we spoke as well, I think it was the next day or the day after, I've spoken to him now a couple of times, but Ralph Santolla, who of course
Yeah.
is, as we're both talking, he's in a coma as we're speaking.
Yeah.
I know you're good mates with him because I had a really good conversation about you with him. He was talking, I don't know who would know this unless you have a conversation with the fella, an intimate conversation, but he shared with me that he actually moved to Sweden, and I don't want to misquote him, but I think he said he actually lived with you, or you moved over there and he's good mates with you and got to hang out with you a fair bit. So,
Yeah.
if it's okay with you, mate, I got a lot of people who listen to my podcast come from North America. So what I'd like to do for somebody who is so familiar with Ralph, because I don't want to beat around the bush here. I mean, his situation is extremely dire, as I understand it. I only am reading on the internet what his mother's shared, but do you know what's going on with him and how he arrived at this point? I'm not asking for any gossip or anything like that, but there are a lot of people out there that are massive fans of his work, and I think we just like to hear your thoughts on him as a man, as a guitarist, on maybe how he arrived at the point that he's at right now.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'm devastated about the news, and just like 2 days before that, he posted this thing. I can't remember exactly what it was, but we always talked about like starting somewhat of a art pop band together, and I really admire him as a musician and as a human being, and he always gives me so much credit as a singer. He always makes posts and it's very inspiring. Coming from him. He's an amazing musician, and I don't think I've gotten more encouragement from any other musician than Ralph Santolla, which is a beautiful thing. So, and I am obviously devastated about this, and I guess I'm still sort of coping with it, or sort of I don't know,
processing it.
Yeah, it hasn't really set in yet. It's crazy. He was just there, we talked, and now he's in a coma. It's just I don't know. Maybe I'm just refusing to believe that it's true and that he is just going to wake up and have a laugh again. Because he's one of the funniest people on this planet. I've had so many laughs with him, and he lived at my house for a while there, and he was going through a pretty rough time, and he's lived a very interesting life, and some rocky roads, but he's a beautiful human being with a heart of gold, for sure, and an amazing musician. So I just really hope we'll get out of this nightmare, soon. And I'm obviously very distracted by the Night Flight press going on right now. And then, when I stop a minute, and it's like, that wasn't a nightmare. It's actually happening, So, yeah, it's not looking too good, That's the thing. But
yeah,
we got to keep our hopes up.
No,
I really do.
Indeed, yeah. He actually. Look, the podcast episode of my conversation with Ralph is out there for anybody to listen to, but I remember when he was talking about you, because he proclaimed himself to be very right-leaning, or a Republican in the US or the American speak, and you're very liberal, and he said, he was talking about your friendship, how you're basically the odd couple, or words to the effect that you're the odd couple, but you still have a great friendship regardless, and that's what he really appreciated about you, and he loved living in Sweden as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Sweden misses him too. It was, it's one of those guys that you wish you lived around the corner, from. It's like you would love to hang out with him every day, because he's he has very different opinions than me, political views and everything. But it's it's always interesting to have. He's a very intelligent man. I loved having discussions with him. And they were always very civilized and but at the same time very sort of, I don't know, personal and sort of heartfelt, whatever, topic we're touching on. So.
Yeah. How did the friendship start between the two of you?
That is a very good question, actually. I'm trying to remember. But I mean, I think it did start with him coming out to one of our shows with Soilwork. And I guess he came up to me, and that must have been, well, at least 10 years ago, maybe like 12, 13, I don't know, 15. It's hard to say. It is a little bit blurry, but somehow it was just like we just connected sort of instantly,
Yeah. And do you know what my opening statement? I think I mentioned. Do you know how he's arrived at this point that he's in a coma? But do you know if he had an existing health condition that led up to this point? Because I'm mates with him on Facebook as well. We've spoken twice, so 2 1-hour-long conversations, and we're friends on Facebook. So I don't know each other by any means, but I know following him on Facebook, he was talking about being bitten by a spider. Now,
Yeah.
I know that's what he mistook his pain for, but was there some sort of an interaction with a spider that led up to this? Is that what's been the precursor to him landing in a coma? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I don't think in this case, 'cause I remember that was probably like 2-3 years ago, and I back then he definitely did have a spider bite,
Yeah.
But I mean, there's no way it could have happened again. It just sounds very unlikely that it would happen again, So I think it is something else, It's been, I don't want to go into detail, but I mean, he at times he lived a pretty rough life, and,
I understand. Yep.
But I think also the impression that I got in the latest years is that he's been taking care of himself. He's been a very, very happy person, and he's been, working out more. He's been going to the gym. He's been, pounding gallons of water every day. That's what he always told me. And it's like, I'm doing good. It's like, okay. So it's like, it's very inspiring too. It is a hard life being a musician. It's
Yeah.
in many ways. And
how about yourself then? With you're spot on. I mean, I've done hundreds of interviews at this point, and I know a lot of the time a musician's life is waiting in airports, being on aeroplanes, and I mean there are a lot of temptations out there on the road. And when you've not got the grind of a day job, a 9 to 5, where you, for example, you can't drink on a Tuesday night if you don't want to have a hangover for the Wednesday morning when you go to work, that sort of thing. Musicians do live in a bubble where they can almost do that sort of thing. And how have you avoided the temptation? Because my impression of you is that you've always been an extraordinarily hard worker, and the quality of your music, your product, has always been very high. So what motivates you, and how have you kept on the straight and narrow after all of these years?
Well, I mean, there have been times when it's hard to not self-medicate, it's, which I have done at times, and especially when there's so much intense touring, involved. And like you said, everything is available, and it's almost like every day is Saturday. But I also sort of hit a wall in the late 2000s, and I just felt like I can't keep doing this, and I never felt that I had any sort of withdrawals, or any kind of abstinence, but it was sort of hard to sort of shut it off. Like coming home from the road, there's so much happening for like 5 weeks, and then you come home and it's all silent and there's nothing going, and it's the hardest part. And it was almost like I had no troubles, just quitting cold turkey. It's like, okay, now it's home, then it's almost like, thank God I don't have to drink anymore. That's what it felt like at the time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
When I came home, it was almost like, it was a hard switch, and there were times when he ended up in a black hole, coming home from tour. But ever since then, I've been cutting down a lot on my drinking, and nowadays I'm extremely careful, because I know what's going to happen if I drink every day. Even if it's on the road, I can't do that anymore. Even if it's just 3 beers and a shot per day, that's I can't handle that anymore, because I just feel bad mentally, and that's why I cut down on it. And I need to drink for the right reasons, when it's sort of a social thing, or if it's fun. It's not to sort of kill boredom or to sort of cover up for a hangover. I just need to make sure that I don't get hungover, because then you're going to end up sort of covering that hangover for the rest of the tour. And that's extremely destructive, because it will catch up with you when you come home.
Mm.
Yeah.
No, you're not wrong. Wise words and sage advice. I mean, my own view is I'm 40 these days, and I think drinking's a young man's game, or young girl's game, you know what I mean? It's a young person's game. I think once you get about 35 or 40, you're just almost not going to give it up, but it's in extreme moderation after that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the worst part is really mentally. I mean, having a hangover, sort of, headache, you can cure that. But like if you get anxiety and all these things, there's nothing you can do about that. It's just not worth it anymore. And I rather be happy and take care of myself, and then sort of choose my battles. I'm still drinking, but I sort of pick my battles.
Yeah, got it. Yep. All right, mate, I better let you go. It's been a pleasure once again. Thanks so much for sharing what you did about Ralph. And, I know me and my family are saying prayers for him, as I'm sure you are, mate. But
yes,
good luck with the album and subsequent tours. And I do hope to catch up with you again and shake your hand when you come to Australia.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Okay, thanks very much, brother.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Take care.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.
You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith, and that was my conversation with Björn Strid, a member of the bands Flight Orchestra and also Soilwork. Thank you so much for listening.